18 minutes for singles, 23 minutes for families, $5.66 when charging at home, or $30.75 when on the road. I wanted to get that right out to you at the beginning, but you may be asking,
what does that mean?
Overnight, our Tesla Model Y charges from a 240-volt outlet in our garage, and it takes about 9 hours if we were to charge from 0 to 100%. But when people ask about charging times, what they're really wanting to know is,
how much is an EV going to slow me down on a road trip?
What are those charging times like? So I asked Twitter, and the responses varied from people who like to make 10-minute charging stops, get right back on the road, and charge a little more often, to people who like to build their meal breaks into charging and will sit for 45 minutes to an hour. I got about 80 reliable answers, then added my road trip since 2021 into the mix and found that individuals generally will stop for 15 to 18 minutes, and families and the overall average is about 23 minutes. Some of that's due to more people needing restrooms, pets needing to be walked, that sort of thing. But most people said that when they're with their families, the car is generally ready before they are, and that's been our experience too. Our average stop is just below 26 minutes, and that's because we have needs. Special needs. So our stops would take just as long even if we took the Prius. So what does that look like?
Are you stopping for 18 to 23 minutes every hour? What does that short charge get you?
On a big road trip, I like to leave home with 100%, and with highway interstate speeds, generally that's going to get me about 230 to 250 miles. Depending on traffic, construction, or road quality, that can be about 4 hours, at which point we would stop and do our 26-minute charge and get back on the road. And our average between stops on a road trip is 137 miles. So we would do that quick charge, get back on the road, and that would get us another 2 to 2.5 hours of traveling. Rinse and repeat, and with a couple of those stops, you can travel 500 miles in a day. Now, you can do bigger trips. You can do 800 miles in a day or 1,000 in a day, but you're going to have those periodic stops every 2 to 2.5 hours after that initial one. But having done lots of those big days myself, I can say having those breaks later into the day, although it slows you down a little bit, it's good to get out and stretch and refresh a little bit before hitting the road again. Now back to costs. At the beginning, I said $5.66 for charging at home or $30.75 on the road. And that would be charging our 75 kilowatt hour battery in our Model Y from 0 to 100%. And although that's not really realistic, and we'll get into that in a minute, when people are coming from gas, they're used to filling up the tank all the way to 100%. And so I want to provide that number since it's more familiar. My home charging is done in off-peak hours, and I can schedule it to charge anytime between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m., and I'll get a great rate of 7.55 cents a kilowatt hour. Although it takes a while, I wake up with the battery as full as I want it for cheap. The $5.66 charge is for a full 0 to 100% charge, but most days I'm only replacing about 20% of the battery, so that would come out to be about $1.15. The supercharger near my home costs 41 cents a kilowatt hour, so it's much more expensive, but it's much faster. And a 0 to 100% charge would cost $30.75 and take about an hour.
An hour? You said 18 to 23 minutes!
Right. That's the change in mindset I was talking about. With gas, you fill up the tank every time if you can afford it, but batteries charge slower the closer they get to full. Think of a glass of water. You can pour really fast at the beginning because the water, like electrons, have plenty of spaces to go into. Then as you get closer to full, you need to slow down to make sure you don't overfill. So the most efficient drivers will charge enough to get on their way, then go, rather than charging past 80 or 90%. What does that mean for costs? Our average Model Y road trip stop costs $12.27, and that's over all of our road trips, excluding a few that were very cheap before supercharger prices went up. So $12.27 an average stop.
But you have to stop more often than with a gas car, so is it really cheaper?
On a recent short road trip of 669 miles, my cost came out to 10 cents per mile. Doing that same trip in a gas car that got 30 miles to the gallon with the gas prices at the time of $3.55, that came out to about 12 cents a mile. Gas has come down a little bit since then, so maybe it would be closer to 11 cents now. And when I averaged up all of my road trips, my average cost on the trip is 11 cents as well. So let's call it close to a fuel-efficient gas car on road trips, but where you really save is at home. If I traveled that same 669 miles from home over time, my cost per mile would be only 2.4 cents. So far better than the 11 cents from either a fuel-efficient gas car or road tripping an EV. Day-to-day is where you can really save, and the Tesla app has a feature where you can see those stats and savings in real time, either by the last month or the last year. On top of that, there's no belts, oil changes, exhaust system that needs maintenance or replacement over time, and brakes can last a really long time because most EVs use the motors to help slow them down through regenerative braking. One other thing I want to mention is something that my brain gets hung up on all the time, and that is equating 100 miles with about an hour of travel. Now, logically, I know that would be averaging 100 miles an hour, and that's not realistic. But when I hear an average of 137 miles between charges, it feels like, yeah, that's just a little over an hour, when really it's 2 to 2.5 hours. 500 miles from Minneapolis is Topeka, Kansas, and even if you could do it at 75 miles an hour average, and no stops, that's still over 6.5 hours. Google estimates 7.5 hours for an ICE car, and you're going to need to stop and get gas or charge up, and probably use a restroom once or twice in there anyway. And if you're making those stops, why not charge? Let's say you like to drive 1,000 miles in a day. Well, from Minneapolis, that would be Fort Worth, Texas. And even at an unrealistic 75 mile an hour average with no stops, that would still take 13 hours and 15 minutes. And Google estimates it at just over 14 hours. But I've done these length drives in a day in both gas cars and EVs, and regardless, you're going to need stops, you're going to need restrooms and food along the way. Did I tell you I saw a gnome run across the highway in California driving down out of the mountains in a winter storm? Road madness is a real thing. Seriously though, if most people are going to travel 1,000 miles in a day, they're going to fly. And for those who would drive it, you probably already know what you're getting into, charging or not. And like I did with Topeka and Fort Worth, if you know the kind of distance you want to travel in a day, or are willing to travel in a day, get on your favorite map app and plot a route that far and then draw a circle around where you live and kind of see what that distance actually is. It's helped me a lot in being able to conceptualize how far I'm actually going to drive in each day. And of course, there are great tools like a Better Route Planner that can help you visualize how traveling with different EVs might be, and you can kind of customize it based on how you like to travel, what a comfortable buffer of charging you'd like to have, and what chargers are available and how fast they are. So definitely check that out if you're in the market for an EV. Plan out some routes in a Better Route Planner and get a sense of what you're getting into. I hope this cost and timing discussion has been helpful to you. If I missed anything or you have other questions, feel free to leave those down in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them. And if there's other topics you'd like to hear about, like hotel charging that can also help you stretch your budget while road tripping, let me know and we'll see if we can cover those in a future video. But for now, thanks for watching, have a great day, happy road tripping, and again, let me know if there are any questions. Thanks for watching. Bye.
All right, last one. Let's do it. Okay. 3, 2, wait, what's my line? Okay, ready?
Yep.
An hour? You said 18 to 23 minutes. Is that convincing? Did it hurt?
Yeah, I shouldn't laugh. Our average stop has been about 26 minutes, and that's because families have needs, and in our case, special needs.
You ready? An hour? You said 18 to 23 minutes.
Okay, one more time, but be choking me before you start talking.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. An hour? You said 18 to 23 minutes. Oh, you look like an effect right there.